doing even very little things for kids is something that can really wow the child and in turn the entire family. So I would actually say that the main barrier that we have encountered is actually the willingness to do something. It's not something that is kind of on the agenda for hoteliers, for hotel managers. They're just not attending to it. You have a range of really between 3 to 5 common things that most hotels do, if they do anything at all, and that's a teddy bear or a mascot. It's a coloring book. Sometimes they have a passport. There's a tent in the room. A teddy and a coloring book is not going to impress a 10-year-old boy, right?
What's up, hospitality? Who are the decision makers at your home? Wife, husband, or kids? I'll be honest, in my place, every time we have a family gathering or family activity, we take in consideration what my daughter will think. We always include her in the planning. But with 32% of booked stays being looked at TikTok right now, and 37% of Americans reporting that they look for places on Instagram to find new discovery travel opportunities, I bet that guests are now taking a lot more in consideration what the kids say, and they are becoming more of a decision makers when it comes to travel. And how are you, hotelier, taking that into your business planning? Today, we will unmask the family power for hotel profitability. We'll find out what has changed in guest expectations that may give more power to kids, what challenges independent hoteliers face when delivering that family package for the guests, and a guide on how you can get started to change your part of the business. But first, my name is Mauricio Schuler, and you're listening to the Schulering Hub Topic Hospitality podcast, a hospitality created for independent hoteliers to catch up and be up to date on the trends and the changes that are happening to our industry. And the changes are fast and intense. But to talk about family and the packages, I brought especially someone that's building a business all around that, Saar Shai. Thanks for joining the show, Saar. So you've been building your business all around family. So can you talk more about your business and why you started?
Yeah, so I would say it's about families, definitely. But interestingly, I think it's more about kids and teens. And there's a distinction here, because I think for the hotel industry, families are kind of considered one segment, one type. And we're kind of looking really in the particulars and the different age ranges, and really focusing on so it's not necessarily about family amenities, which we'll get to it, which are very kind of typical. We're talking about the kids' experience. And I come from a background of game design, toy invention, kids publishing, everything that is to do with kids products and experiences, consulting, inventing, working with many different companies in that area for many years. And my wife as well. We've done some projects together, some work together. And then about a bit over a year ago, we decided to see where we can take our know-how and expertise and in our network and make new experiences and new products in another industry. And we found hospitality, and it was for us a perfect link. And as people who are always fascinated with hospitality, with travel, and especially looking to the future and thinking about the advancements in tech, which are undeniable, and actually what is going to still remain in 2-5 years, and realizing that vacations, holidays, hospitality, shared physical experiences are still going to be a thing. And then we said, let's look at what hotels are doing for kids. We're not talking about the resorts and the destinations. We're not talking about the beachfront, all-inclusive that have the kids club, and they're kind of set, even though we know that we can improve that. We were looking at other hotels, mainly city hotels. And what we discovered is they do very little for kids. Our assumptions include the fact that because they're not destination hotels, because they're not primarily considered for families, they absolve themselves of doing anything, which is a shame because in that market, differentiation is really hard to come by. It's in short supply. And this is where there's a lot that can be done and actually quite easily and cheaply. And yet we're seeing hotels doing the same thing. It's the teddy or mascot, it's the tint in the room, it's the coloring book or milk and cookies at turn down. And interestingly, even at the top end of the range, so luxury, ultra luxury hotels, upscale hotels, they're doing things that quality-wise are the same as your 3 stars and your budget hotels, which is shocking and fascinating. So then we decided, what, let's jump right in. And what we did is we actually established the first ever kids and teens hospitality consultancy that looks especially at teens and kids at hotels and developing innovations and new experiences for them. Interestingly, we're talking about amenities and experiences that are commercially very beneficial for the hotels. So unlocking loyalty, repeat visits, referrals, reviews, the 3 R's we call them. Anything that we design is really set to enhance the brand loyalty and the loyalty to a specific property. Kids are really impressionable, and actually because very little is done for them, there's a huge scope for it to become something that hotels connect with their guest segment, which although they're not the ones who pay, they're the ones who spend. They're the ones who are very influential when it comes to choice of which hotel to go, or even more so, which hotels to go back to. And they also, especially when talking about teens, are travelers in their own right very, very soon.
And the name of the company, Wonderland Consulting, right?
Yes, of course. I forgot. Wonderland with an A.
Great. So in your experience, because now you said that for the last year, you've been delving inside the hospitality, trying to understand the motivation behind and why hotels cannot really target kids and teens, right? And what are the most significant challenges that these hotels face today and to try to attract this?
I would say, kind of ironically speaking, not very much is preventing them from doing it. It's being open-minded, forward-thinking, and allocating some budget in order to start doing it. Unfortunately, when it comes to guest experience, when it comes to the rooms department, typically their mindset is towards cutting costs, optimizing operations. And even though for adults, there are the traditional usual things that they do in order to exceed expectations, to surprise and delight, what we're saying is that any pound or euro that is spent on a child, first of all, is multiplied, because when you delight a child, you also delight automatically the parents. So there's more impact around this. And also because no one's really doing it. So if you're doing the same thing for adults, that is something that becomes just noise, just the same. Whereas doing even very little things for kids is something that can really wow the child and in turn the entire family. So I would actually say that the main barrier that we have encountered is actually the willingness to do something. We know that operations and execution, with hotels, things are very hectic and complicated and a lot of the time expensive. But this is really an opportunity to shine, especially in a market that where this is really kind of a gap, something that is a ready-made differentiator that hotels are simply not acting on.
So basically, it's a lack of willingness or creativity to work with teenagers and kids.
Yes, I would say so, because in this industry, so I'm talking about city hotels, it's not the done thing. It's not the traditional thing. It's not something that is kind of on the agenda for hoteliers, for hotel managers. They're just not attending to it.
And when it comes to operations, you just mentioned how difficult, how complex hotel operation is, right? There's no doubt the technology is here to say that everything will be automated very soon. However, we understand that in reality, there is a lot of work behind the scenes that guests don't normally see. What are these operational or experimental hurdles that they face that could complicate things or their thinking to be more open for teens and kids?
Well, I would actually say that not much. I think it's a misconception that this might be a burden or an interruption to the operations. The most basic example that I would give, the MVP, the minimum viable product, if you will, taking a term from tech, which is what is the simplest thing that has an impact, even if it's not perfect, and that is the welcome gift. So, as I mentioned before, you have a range of really between 3 to 5 common things that most hotels do, if they do anything at all, and that's a teddy bear or a mascot, it's a coloring book, sometimes they have a passport, there's a tent in the room, and all of these things, first of all, are very stuck in the age range of, 2 to 6, 7 maximum. So really, there's nothing really beyond that, especially when it comes to teens. But, a teddy and a coloring book is not going to impress a 10-year-old boy, right? So even simply thinking about a welcome gift that is slightly better, that is slightly exceptional, that is thought through, even just age appropriate, which is a way to personalize it. So when you think about personalization, it's not necessarily the, embroidered initials or, the handwritten note. It's giving the child something that is appropriate and that they would like. And that is something that, really easy to implement because welcome gifts or welcome gestures is a thing that hotels do. From there, we're now exploring different ways of wowing kids, teens, and families throughout the stay. And it doesn't seem like that there's much issue when it comes to execution. And I guess my point is that it's a misconception that this would be something that would be difficult or risky to implement.
Okay. Now, as you say that, I can imagine the hoteliers thinking the same thing that I'm thinking right now. You said that giving gifts to kids that are age appropriated. And there is a layer of difficulty that is having those prepared for different kids, right? Or having that question and checking that into their SOPs when they are preparing the rooms, preparing the guests. And not all hotels have this level of operation, mainly now with the staff difficulties. So how would you go over, because you're saying that this would be the minimum, the easiest thing to do, giving a gift that kids appropriated, but logistically speaking, are you saying that they should have many gifts prepared and just hand when the time comes, or they should have that into their PMS and have a plan bigger than that?
So actually, this is very interesting because we worked with hotels exactly on this challenge. City hotels, especially as far as storage space and inventory, that's something that is challenging. And we actually developed a system where they can have quite minimal stock, where some of the things are actually appropriate across age ranges. And there's 1 or 2 things in the welcome gift bundle that is correlated with the right age. And it's very easy to create that based on really minimal stock. The other thing is that we have kind of an annual subscription where we make sure that you are either that you have stock based on your availability space, or we send you whatever you need when you need it. So from that perspective, we're optimizing this so that each welcome gift seems very thought out, and yet it's not that every time someone comes, let's say, a VIP guest, your guest relations or your front of house manager or, the concierge has to run to the toy shop to buy the thing that's specific. We are aware of these practices and also challenges. And in fact, we're here to
And now that we're talking about solving challenges, right? We are talking about bringing what would be the minimum and the easiest thing to start. If I'm independent hotelier, okay, so I'm talking about not about the corporates. I'm talking about the smaller hotels. It can even be big hotel as long as it's not a part of a corporate. And they are looking at addressing that, and they are interested in starting to target more kids and teenagers for best guest experience. What would be the first steps that they should undertake and evaluate the needs of the younger kids?
Interestingly, we don't just look at which of the guests are the family arrived. It's also guests that have family that didn't necessarily arrive. That's also something that's interesting because you can actually upsell from that. But I won't get into that. But we look at really the profile of the hotel. We look at what they potentially can achieve. So, for example, we're looking at the area where it is located. If it's a very family attractive area, and yet the hotel itself isn't getting a lot of families, that's something that can really be improved. So the numbers of previous years of family guests isn't necessarily representative of what the hotel actually can achieve. So it would be looking at really the family business, basically the family segment for that hotel, but also looking at the potential of what it could be. And then looking also, at the brand, at the culture, at the available budgets that the hotel have. And one of the things that we are doing is thinking about, and goes back to me mentioning the minimum viable product, looking at what's the smallest thing that we can actually put into place, roll out, and test as a pilot to see if that works, to get some feedback from guests, from families, and then we can expand it. So we're not jumping into, kind of like a year-long project. We're not really, we're not renovating the lobby, and we're not having you sign, stock for 2 years. We're actually really talking about what can we do in a few weeks that will have a measurable impact that we can then expand going forward.
So we're looking for quick wins, right?
Exactly.
Great. And if we could give here a little gift to our listeners, to our hoteliers, yeah, and kind of outline, because you start outlining step by step that you do for them and how you work for them, right? But if you could outline a step by step guide that they could start using themselves and assessing if that is a path they would like to take, what would you tell them?
Yeah, that is actually something that we're currently working on, which is we're aware that in this digital connected world, we actually have knowledge that we can share that can get hoteliers, hotel managers on that journey, which is also brilliant for us because, as I mentioned before, one of the biggest barriers and challenges is the open-minded, the forward-thinking, the willingness of hotels to do. And if we can get hotels to start doing even little things, that can really help the hotel, and of course, in turn, hopefully help us have a relationship with that hotel. So I think what we're looking at is creating this kind of guide document that first of all shows hoteliers and hotel managers what exists. I think the most important thing is to actually understand what other hotels are doing, and actually through that realize that it's really the same, and one shouldn't really kind of just check that box. That will hopefully allow the team at the hotel to think of something extra, something different, something special to do. And we're going to include some suggestion of that. So whether you work with us or not, I think that a good tip is thinking about the age and the gender of the child. So it's not something that only we can do. Anyone on the team can know, if it's a VIP guest, especially because that potentially has a huge payoff when you satisfy and wow such a guest, but also looking at the ages of kids that arrive at the hotel, and instead of giving all of them the same thing, thinking about, okay, maybe we can have a few of each thing being relevant and actually desired by a different age range. And it's something that we're also going to include in that guide, which is what kids like at which ages, and also what's the optimal way of dividing it. So what age ranges are kind of optimal so you have the least variance and the least stock, and yet it'll be very special when you give it.
How can the hoteliers collect this data and evaluate it?
So that's interesting, because if we're talking about direct booking, so booking on the website, and this is something that you know much more than me as far as independent hotels, that's something that can be included either in the booking process, or a lot of hotels have a post-booking communication, either an email or a phone call. And very interestingly, what we discovered is that families actually are delighted when the hotel asks them about the kids. It shows real interest and real care and real intimacy in that kind of hospitality relationship. So that is something that I would recommend hotels that can do, that can communicate with guests, whether immediately after booking or shortly before arrival, showing interest in the child, even just asking questions about their age and about their interest. That is something that is very positively impactful with families. And it's not necessarily that you need to do everything with all these pieces of data, but just asking, just showing interest is something that really goes well with families.
Okay, so you are saying that like you ask the question to show intent, to create that rapport, to create that bond, but the data itself, how would they store, collect, review the data so that can be measurable in the wins, the quick wins that they are gaining? Do you guys have an idea for that?
Right. That is quite a tricky situation when we talk about CRM and this data at scale. So what I described before is, specifically per family. It's not really about, okay, well, we're going to feed the data. I think that if you are in an email exchange with the parents, you're allowed to collect a few pieces of information as long as there's certain restrictions. We're not at this point getting into the more automated and technical aspect of it, because as I'm sure you know, with GDPR and other restrictions, it's very restrictive and complicated, especially when it comes to kids. I think that at this stage, the personal touch and really kind of registering a few bits of information that are personal is permitted and would be the way that we recommend doing it. And it is how we did it. Yeah.
So let's go back to basics, ask the question, create the report, take a note on the PMS, put a note there saying the age, getting the information that you get, and get prepared for when they check in, right?
Exactly right. What I will also say is one of the interesting pieces of feedback that we get from hotels that we've worked with is actually how much staff are delighted to engage with these special touches or these gestures or these welcome gifts and really kind of act upon, any information that they get from guests about, what kids like, for example, or, what they're looking forward to. It's really something that staff are finding very satisfying and actually joyful when it comes to their work, because it gives them a way to really connect with the guests. And it's something that many of them, that's the reason that they go into hospitality. And we're kind of giving them more of a chance to provide excellent hospitality that way.
And we're coming now to the last part of our chat where we play a game about the future. And a disclaimer here that we are not predicting the future because we can't do that. So it's just really a game to brainstorm, get some food for thought, and plant that seed in your hoteliers, in your mind, on things that you can do and things that you should be paying attention to in the future. So don't bet money on what we say, but pay attention to what we are discussing here. And when it comes to the future, Saar, what emerging trends that you foresee that could further influence that guest experience, particularly for families in the young generation?
Well, first of all, what we're seeing from the data is that this type of travel, first of all, is being kind of sub-segmented. So you have multi-generational travel where, the grandkids come with the parents and the kids, and you have even like a skip gen travel where it's just the grandparents and the kids. You also have families that travel where the kids are not at a child age, but they're still considered the kids because they're 22 and they're living with the parents and the parents are paying for it. So, or for example, bleisure where professionals book a hotel for the purposes of work and the family joins at some point. There's really kind of different ways of travel, and we see that involvement in families is really increasing and something that we really want to do. The other thing that we believe is going to be something that we're actually actively promoting, but we believe is really something that we'll see in the near future, is kids and teens engaging in loyalty programs. So it's not necessarily kind of, the mega group loyalty programs with the points in the Amex, and actually just the opposite. We're looking at physical based loyalty. I wouldn't even call them programs. I would say loyalty gestures. A lot of what we're doing, a lot of our amenities and the things that we're doing with hotels are actually designed to create a mystery that encourages the child to get their parents to come back to that hotel, which is actually quite easy to do. As I mentioned before, because no one's really doing it, and kids are very much into narratives and collectibles and kind of continuing experiences. I think this is really something that is going to be very dominant in this industry going forward. And once we figure it out and once hotels are starting to adopt it, I think there will be very, very interesting dynamic of kids and teens encouraging, and even begging their parents to come back to a certain hotel because there's a continuation from the previous stay.
Now that you say that, I had like a business plan once for a hotel that was concentrating in books that was mystery books or like criminal books. Of course, not for kids, but it's the same type of idea. So you get criminal books, famous criminal books, and each room would have one famous book that would be the theme of the room, and you would have clues spread out over the room, over the hotel, making that stay kind of a discovery of that book, right? And then each different room would have a new idea. So I can see that being applied very well for kids, just using like a Harry Potter theme, let's say, just as an example. And they start discovering the story over with little clues around the room, I believe that just to picture what we've been saying here and creating that collectible that once they finish that room, they probably want to go to the next room and figure it out what is next that they can find out, right?
Absolutely. I think that, you can give an adult points and, frequent flyer miles or whatever it is that's collected and then kind of gives the benefit. That's great. That works. But that's just the same across the entire industry. But to present a child with a mystery or the opportunity to level up or to discover the next thing, that is something that's simply irresistible. And this is exactly why I mentioned that the stuff that we're doing are designed to delight and provide really exciting, amazing experiences for the kids, but also designed for the commercial benefit of the hotel eventually.
That's cool. And how can hoteliers actually get ahead of these trends and position themselves effectively to long-term success and this changing in the industry?
So I think, first of all, really take kids and teens seriously. We have published, just before the end of 2024, we published the first Kids and Teens Hospitality Report, which looks at really that segment across the industry. And what we found is that their influence on travel decision is just undeniable. It's very significant. I'll give a specific example. YouGov actually published a survey the past couple of weeks that talks about teens being involved in one way or another in 57% of decisions of which hotel to go back to. That's quite significant. So I think taking it seriously. The other thing that I would say is, it kind of goes back to what I mentioned before. It can be small things. It can be simple things. That's a good way to start. When you mentioned, a mystery adventure with clues, it might just be one clue. It might just be one thing that teases just one more thing that they get next time. Think small in a way, which is fitting because we're talking about kids. So I think a good way to really get a start is thinking small. And what is the thing that you, the hotelier, the hotel manager, can do in the next couple of weeks that can make really the huge difference between not doing anything to doing that little bit of a thing. We're really seeing the results.
Awesome, Saar. Awesome. And any word of inspiration for our hoteliers out there?
I am thrilled to be part of hospitality and hotels. I think hotels are amazing spaces. Think that actually thinking about how the technology is going to change the way that we live in the near future. I think that hospitality moments and experiences are going to stay and they're going to grow. And I think hotels are going to play a huge part in everyone's lifestyle. And I'm excited to see what's next. And I think anyone in this industry should be excited to, not think of their hotel as just a bed and a bathroom. It's really an experience if you make it so.
And wise words. Saar, how can our audience get in touch with you and learn more about Wonderland?
So you can go to wonderland.london. So that's Wonderland with an A, WANDER, land.london. You can also email Alicia. She'd be delighted to hear from you. And this is revealing our email, but we just love talking to people from this industry and especially in independent hotels. That is Alicia, ALICIA @wonderland.london. Also, if you go to kidshospitality.org, that is where we published our Kids Hospitality Report. It shows a lot of interesting data, but it also gives a lot of ideas taken from kids industries where we come from and actually where the overlap is and what amazing things can be done considering the innovations from that aspect of the market.
Awesome. So I'll put all these links on the notes in the chat. It was a pleasure talking to you, Saar. Thank you very much for sharing your know-how here and your research as well and the things that you've been doing. I believe that there is an important thing for city hotels mainly to look at because they may be missing a lot of opportunity with teens and kids. Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Schulering, thanks for listening and I will see you next time. Bye.